Ben, Strength Factory coach. Welcome to the MTB podcast.
Hey Ben, yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Ben meets Ben. I meet a lot of Bens at the moment, actually.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure. Well, in the 80s, I think there were a lot of Bens. I went to school with quite a lot of Bens. Maybe a little resurgent. There seems to be a couple at the kids' school as well.
Yeah,
so yeah.
Bring it back. Bring back the Bens.
The two Bens here are accidentally matching khaki t-shirts as well that we didn't do on purpose.
Apologies for that one. So today we're here at Pedal the Bike Away at the Forest of Dean. And this is a bit of a local spot for you, I gather?
Yeah, just over an hour from Bristol. And over the last sort of decade, well, probably 8 years I've been in Bristol, I've been here countless times on the trails in the cafe. And it's mint. We're really lucky to have it.
Yeah, it's somewhere that I must admit I've filmed here before, but I've not actually ridden here for fun. And I was hoping today to get out at some point, but the weather is pretty atrocious, isn't it?
It's absolute stinker.
Yeah, good old British winter for you. 8 years in the area here, and as far as I understand, you also spent 8 years in the army. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, going back. Funny enough, actually, that was 8 years that I basically didn't mountain bike either.
Right. Okay.
So it's probably, but yeah. So after uni, went to Sandhurst, joined the British Army. I was in the Princess of Wales's Royal Regiment, which is an infantry regiment from the southeast of England, and just had an absolute great time, to be honest. Yeah. Doing all the things that you kind of want to do, really, doing like soldier stuff and traveling and all that sort of thing. Yeah. But it was, I guess, in terms of this part of my life and really refining the love of mountain biking, that pretty much happened as I left the army and then, funnily enough, moved to London, which is not a hotbed of mountain biking. No. But it did mean that I was about 45 minutes from Swinley, where obviously your mate Rob Hansel from MTB Forums, and that's where he's been based. I don't know if he still is. And that's where I really kind of got back into it. Mm. Yeah.
Did you get an opportunity to ride at all when you were in the army, or did you ride beforehand and then came back to it?
Yeah, so I was a mountain biker, I guess is what I would call myself, since about like 1995 when I was 15, around that time when I got my first Kona Fire Mountain, like fully rigid, 26-inch wheels. Yeah. But it was sick. Like, it was the best thing ever when I got that. I was so stoked. And then rode all the way through like uni as well. The University of Portsmouth, where I went, had a really good scene, despite, again, the lack of good trails. Somehow, we'd get the train up and ride Queen Elizabeth Country Park there, QE, where they do some riding and racing now. But yeah, it was all very much cross country for me back then, and riding BMX as well.
You then, I don't know the timeline, but you then ended up working and doing like a lot of review stuff for Wide Open. Is that right?
Yeah. So when I then left London and moved to Bristol, well, it's funny because actually I did Wide Open, then MBUK and Wide Open, and a funny little story I always think, and it kind of sounds really cheesy. It's like a chase your dreams kind of anecdote where when I first got to Bristol and started Strength Factory and wanted to start coaching mountain bikers, obviously I turned up here, basically no friends here, no industry or bike connections at all, and like initially no clients, and then I got that first client. And so to make a living, what I was doing is abseiling at the time, so industrial rope access work, so tall buildings, bridges, stuff like that, maintenance, all sorts of different stuff. And one day I was literally abseiling one of the massive blocks in central Bristol, and I was actually cleaning the windows of MBUK. I looked in, I was like, shit, that's Mountain Bike UK, sick, because I was getting back, I was really back into riding and stuff, and I was like, oh, cool, they're in Bristol, all right, that's where cool. And, and then fast forward about a year later, I managed to wangle my way in as a freelancer onto the Wrecking Crew, doing bike reviews for them.
Wow.
Having previously, as you said, doing about a year reviewing bikes for Wide Open, where I met Jamie from Wide Open, who runs it, who's a really good friend to this day. And I pitched him an idea. I was like, because basically I couldn't afford to do mountain biking the way I wanted to at that time. And I was like, well, you know, I'm going to go and race the whole National Enduro Series, which was absolutely thriving at that time. It's kind of early, but it was really big. The UK Gravity Enduro, run by Steve Parr, who did an amazing job. I was like, you know, can I get a test bike and race it all summer and review it on that basis? And he's like, yeah, sick. And we made it happen. I got a test bike. I was like, sick. I've got a free bike, you know. Yeah. And then I did that for like a year or so. In fact, that bike got stolen, but that's a different thing. Awkward. And then ended up doing the Wrecking Crew, which again, I'm very grateful to Rob Weaver, who we both know, who took me on there. Did that for a couple of years. And then I went back to Wide Open, where I ran all of their product testing for probably a few years, actually. So I got to ride a lot of different bikes, a lot of different kit, but also a lot of e-bikes, which is why we're here. And I say, well, a lot, probably maybe 8 or maybe 10, but quite early ones.
How long ago are we talking? Yeah.
Rudimentary. So basically they pretty much all had, the battery bolted onto the down tube as an afterthought, that sort of vibe. And I'm trying to place it now.
I mean, it's 7 or 8 years ago, maybe?
Maybe not quite that long ago. More like 5 probably.
Okay.
Give or take.
But there's still plenty like that then, but designed in that way, weren't there?
Yeah. And they all had a 500 watt hour battery. And it was very unusual to see them out on the trails. I was like pretty much the only person I knew who had one. And it was like, well, this is a bit different.
Yeah. I round about that time was when I was doing a bit of contracting work and started using e-bikes for just for media, really, just for like hauling a big heavy bag around. And it was the perfect, and also just to keep up with pro riders. It was like one of the only ways I could probably do that. Yeah. And like you say, it was quite a unique thing to see, and people out on the trails would be stopping you and like asking you about it. And you know, at the time, it was so early that people were just inquisitive. There wasn't that, people didn't have the negativity hadn't built up at that point yet. Yeah. But it was interesting to be riding e-bikes at that early stage where there was a lot wrong with them. There's an awful lot not right with them, shall we say? Yeah. But it must have been interesting. So were you also like reviewing e-bikes, or was it just a case of using them?
Yeah. So reviewing them, which is obviously an interesting thing because you got nothing to compare them with. Yeah, because it's a new thing. But you know, just trying to write about living with them and the reality. And I guess at that time, I was, I think thinking back as well at that time, just by coincidence, I didn't actually ride like a real variety of the different motors and stuff. I'm pretty sure, apart from the Specialized, because I was one of the first people to have the Levo SL when that came out, which is a really big deal. Like this is a whole new thing. Specialized jumping ahead of the curve there with this, making the curve really. But apart from that, I think I'd only ridden Shimano motors pretty much, or maybe an early Bosch on a Mondraker. But yeah, you're just doing your best to, is it fun? Did it fall apart? Some did. Did the battery fall off when I landed a jump? Some did. Is it waterproof? Some were. Yeah. Did the frame crack? Yeah, some did. Yeah.
We've come a long way.
Yeah, I think we have. Yeah. Yeah, I really think we have, both in the quality of the bike. I think across the industry, there's still a big reliability issue with warranty and stuff. So many friends, they spend a lot of money on a brand new bike and it ends up being warranted in a year. And you just think about the impact of that over the scale of the world, of all these batteries and motors in landfill or whatever. And it's pretty shit. But in terms of the experience you get from a modern e-bike, it's pretty unreal, isn't it? Yeah.
I've been actually thinking a lot about the sort of efficacy of e-bikes and also carbon frames. And you think about the lifespan of the average e-bike is probably a lot shorter than you might say the average mountain bike. And especially the cost of batteries, the cost of the motor, it won't take many years before it isn't cost effective to be replacing them out of warranty. And so there you go, straight to landfill.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. And I also think similar to electric cars, actually, the resale value on e-bikes is a bit shit because everyone's so worried about buying one without a warranty.
Yes.
You could have an $8,000 e-bike 18 months later, you might only get $3,000 for it second hand.
Yeah.
And whoever's buying it is still terrified that 3 rides later it's going to break down and they're going to have to spend $2,000 on a new motor, battery, and a service centre.
Yeah.
And so it's the same in electric cars, you know. And I sound like some climate change denier here who's like, we need more diesel, you know, or whatever. But that is the reality, is that all of those electric things, their resale value is so poor that I think it affects their value proposition in a way.
Yeah.
Although at the moment everything's on sale.
Yeah, that's true. Making the
so maybe it tips it the other way, and a lot of people, you know, I don't think I've ever bought a bike, although I haven't bought a bike in about 8 years. I'm quite lucky, but I don't think I'd ever buy a bike thinking about resale value. Yeah. I'm thinking of it as a fun thing, and at the end of my time with it, I get what I get. You know.
Yeah.
But maybe some people do think of it. You know.
I think there should be a lot more responsibility put on the manufacturers, and I'm sure there will be over time to make motors more serviceable and batteries as well, like replacing cells, things like that. And perhaps there's a market there. I'm sure there will be a market there for the bikes once they're out of warranty, that then your local service centre, whatever it might be, can come along and you pay them to give it a once over like you would with your car maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you could, even if they're not accredited, Bosch or Shimano, I'm fairly sure it's happening now. Like I've heard people talk about it and stuff, where there are just like switched on, mechanically, electronically minded people setting up, you know, right, your bike's out of warranty, but I can fix it. Maybe I'm not supposed to, but there are people out there, I think, doing that sort of thing now, and that will only grow, I think. So. Yeah,
I agree. That can only be a good thing. So you mentioned briefly that you've not probably bought a bike for a while. How did your relationship with Vitus bikes come along?
Yeah, so it started off with testing them. So I think I had one of their early e-Summit e-bikes, which had like a very Larry paint job.
Oh yeah.
And
you have the chameleon paint job or whatever they called it.
It was called like disco or something crazy. It had like a fade in it and purple bits, and it was pretty garish, but I like that stuff. And I had that, and I also had the Summit enduro bike, pedal bike. Is that what we call them? Pedal bikes, muscle bikes. I hate the word acoustic, by the way.
Okay, I'll just delete that out of every question.
And so as you know, I mean, I think as everyone watching, listening knows, like the value there is unreal. And I was like, these bikes are just sick, you know, because I was testing Santa Cruzes that cost twice as much and stuff. And really, I'm like, I don't know why you'd pay that when, you know, you can get all of this. You could have a really dialed Vitus and a trip to Morzine and some change left over, you know, for the same money.
And the Santa Cruz is a very direct comparison as well.
Yeah.
Quite a similar bike.
Yeah, I think in a way, I mean, there'll be people say, oh, you know, you've got the VPP and all this and all that. But basically I tested a few of their bikes and always gave them great reviews. And that's independent testing. Yeah. Like there's no relationship there, except the marketing guy sends you a bike, you use it, you write about it, you send it back, you know, and they were sent back as well. And then when I was getting a bit fed up of testing, because it's a lot of palaver fitting it around the day job as well of coaching, unpacking, building boxes, sending them back, storing the boxes and the bikes in my normal house.
Gosh, it's
a nightmare. First world problems, but it was a nightmare. They were like the first and only people I reached out to. I was like, I had a good relationship through email and on the phone. I was like, look, this is my proposition. I've got this reach, you know, this is my audience, which is mostly kind of like 35 to 55-year-old men is the majority of my audience, who they're just like normal riders. And, you know, Vitus is all about real bikes for real riders. And luckily for me, they said yes. And at the moment we're in a bit, you know, I'll be honest, we're in a funny little limbo period where I don't know and they don't know if I'm kind of supported this year or not. But literally a month before it all went tits up for Chain Reaction and Wiggle, they sent me the new Vitus e-Summit e-bike, which is, you know, was part of our kind of deal. And so I'm continuing to represent the brand as best I can because I believe in the brand. I've got a sick e-bike that's pretty much brand new still, although it's covered in mud in the back of the van. And so I guess, I still ride for Vitus and I'm stoked on the bikes and I hope it continues with when things get resolved for them.
Yeah, fingers crossed there. There's the industry is in a bit of a fragile state right now. And so it's, I hope things do work out there. So you touched on the coaching side. So let's move on to the coaching. So what I would like to really start with is how you came to coaching mountain biking specifically, and then how you ended up reaching out to some of those pro riders.
Basically, when I was first out of the army, living in London, like I said, I was just coaching anybody. It's the start of my personal training career, if you like. And you're in a big commercial gym and it's anyone. I want to lose weight. I want to get more muscle, whatever, and that's cool. And that's a really important part of my education and development as a coach, all those different people. But for me, I was just thinking, I'm not sure this has really got the longevity for me to hold my interest. And I was absolutely falling back in love with riding at that time. And it was an exciting time. Bikes were starting to get pretty good then as well, around sort of 2010 to 2012, that era, full suspension trail bikes were getting really, really decent. And so I was also then kind of inspired as well by, certainly over in America, there's a guy there, Bike James website, who was a real pioneer in the online mountain bike fitness game. And he kind of had it to himself for quite a while. I imagine he made an absolute killing selling programs when he was the only one doing it pretty much.
A monopoly.
And I was like, oh, okay, this is possible. And then, in Dirt, who I know you used to work for, Darren Roberts used to have the column in there, Conehead, who was coach to the Athertons and worked with all the Red Bull athletes. I was like, okay, there's people doing this. And then I became aware of Alan Milway and what he's doing. I was like, I think there's something here. I think we can make a business out of this. And then basically every day at work at the gym, the people who come and see me are going to be mountain bikers and we're just going to talk about bikes and the racing. And that sounds pretty sick. And then maybe I'll get to go to some races and stuff like that. So, and that was kind of the vision I had. And that's actually what moved us to Bristol, my wife Leanne and I. We knew we wanted to get out of London. We wanted a bit more space and that sort of thing. And MBR magazine readers voted Bristol as the number one city in the UK for mountain bikers. Yep. So we're like, sick. All right, we had a couple of weekends away in Bristol, rode around Ashton Court, which is flat as a pancake, but we
made a mistake.
Yeah. Had a great time, but thought, carpe YOLO, let's move to Bristol. And that's literally what brought us here to help to start this business.
And then when did it turn into just coaching regular mountain bikers to then coaching professional athletes? Yeah,
so relatively early, I got a really big break through Jamie at Wide Open, who I did the review for, because at the time they had a really well-established, really good downhill team. And the National Downhill Series, was the BDS as it was at the time, was really thriving. And on that team, we had Rich Thomas, who had raced some World Cups, had young lad called Morgan Tyrrell, who went on to race Junior World Cups and stuff. And there was Kai Forte, the legendary BMXer, who I was a bit starstruck by because I used to watch him on the videos when I was at uni, when I rode BMX. And he had a Red Bull helmet. And then also a young local lad to here, Charlie Hatton, and who was about 15 at the time and was a really promising youth racer. And basically, so I got that opportunity via that. And it's funny because, I really put everything I knew and everything I had into that to do the best job, especially with young Charlie, who, I feel really, really lucky to have been a part of that early journey, because I was with Charlie and coaching him and, going to a couple of World Cups with him all the way from the age of 15 all the way to his first one or maybe two, maybe the end of his first season with the Athertons on track at the time, and going to I went to Lords, his first World Cup, that was with Intent still, and then he went to the Athertons. I went to Fort William with them and just went right through that journey all the way, taking him through to pro. Now, look, Charlie was always going to do really well. But it's nice to know I did a bit to help him on that journey, you know.
I actually worked with Charlie probably 7 years ago, and that was I think that was a dirt feature, and that could have been the exposure shoot that I was saying to you about, and we spent I think 2 nights at Avan Lodge, and it was one of those shoots where you just sit around all day long waiting for it to get dark because it was a bike light shoot. Yeah. And so you sat around just chilling. And so, and I at the time I thought, you're a sound lad, like really nice guy. And then he kind of went off my radar for a while. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until I started seeing him really properly smashing it on the World Cup circuit, I thought, God, this guy's got it.
Yeah.
And I mean, to see where he is now is just, I mean, yeah, well done.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously since then, like, just to be clear, obviously he you know, he's been with like Alan Milway now for maybe 5 years, give or take. Yeah. Who's absolutely top of the game and doing an amazing job with him. But yeah, it's nice to know I played a role in that journey, and I'm really proud of that as well. And I'm still, you know, love to see Charlie, and yeah, we've got a good relationship. So
absolutely,
it's good.
I noticed on your website that you've worked with Wyn Masters as well before. Did you work with him directly, or was it just through your courses?
No, directly. And this, again, the power of social media, Ben, is that what was it? It was a couple of years ago now, and I saw that he was moving to the UK, because I think he'd been living in Europe before, maybe Germany or something. And I was like, oh, he's moving to the UK, Chichester. Oh, that's random. Wonder what's going on. And I just reached out. I said, hey, you know, it's still the season, but at the end of the season, do you think we can have a chat and just see if we can work something out? You know, this is what I can offer you, but let's have a chat, see if it's a fit, and if it is, then I'd love to work with you. And he was like, yeah, cool. And then we did have the chat, and he moved to the UK. And then, yeah, I would go down to Chichester from Bristol. So a bit of a mission, but, you know, absolutely, you know, worthwhile from my point of view.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of, you know, building my credibility by working with riders of that level. And also, you know, just him posting stuff when he's got 250,000 followers, and he's just like a really interesting, cool guy to coach. And I'll be honest, I've coached a lot of really good, strong athletes, but he did things to my watt bike that it has never seen before or since. Like, I pretty much had to have it serviced afterwards. No. Like, yeah, because he rides every single day, like almost, well, I would say respectfully at times, and he probably knows this, to his detriment as well, where I'm like, Wyn, do you think you could just have a rest? Do you think you could just chill? Yeah. And he really couldn't. He just rides every single day. He'd be out. And he's an absolute animal. I
mean, he's the same age as me. He's 36, and to see him still racing at that top level, what do you think it is that makes him special, that allows him to keep pushing at his age?
I guess just not stopping, and just that hunger. Like he rides every day, not because anyone's telling him to. It's just in him. Like he wants to, whether he's doing wheelies on the pump track or e-biking. He does a lot of e-biking, or pedaling the road bike, or you know, he just rides the whole time, and he obviously just loves it, and he loves the sport as well as his own participation in it. Yeah. You know, I think you can see that with the Privateer project, and you know, when you see. Also, I would imagine, without speaking for him, that when you listen to him in podcasts and you hear how long that journey was for him to get to that top level, he had to grind for it, didn't he?
Yeah.
It didn't just come. He wasn't like some 16-year-old on a factory ride. He had to grind for it, like a lot of those Kiwis do.
Yeah.
Because come over to Europe, roll the dice, live in a van, and so now it's all the sweeter because he's got a great life. You know, he's doing really well.
Yeah, it's similar. It kind of makes me think of the motor racers that come from Australia and New Zealand, and that they come over to Europe, and their whole life has to change just to pursue their sport. And it must be so hard to grow up in the Southern Hemisphere and then realize that if you want to compete, everything is half a world away.
Yeah, yeah. Probably swings and roundabouts. Probably not easy being like a surfer from England or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, so there's choose your sports, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Geographically, you should choose them. And you mentioned that he uses his e-bike for sort of training or maybe just for fun. But do you find that pro riders are increasingly using e-bikes as a training tool?
100%. Yeah. So I coach Joe Smith these days, who was second at Hardline last year. Well, actually 2 years ago now. It's 24 now. Who's obviously an absolute legend of like UK and World Cup mountain biking.
Yeah.
And for him, that e-bike, again, he rides a Vitus as well.
Yeah.
The e-bike is a massive part of what he does, because one of the things I always say to people when they're questioning, oh, you're a coach, why are you riding an e-bike? Or, people, the negative people who probably aren't listening to this, is that the e-bike just gives you control and choice over your effort level.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be days where a top pro rider like Joe Smith is tired and sore from the gym, from hard training, and also the fact he's got 2 young children, let's face it. Yeah. And an e-bike means, and he lives by lots of really steep Welsh hills as well. It's not like, there's no cruisy rides there. Yeah. In fact, your neck of the woods. An e-bike means he can get to the top of the hill easily if he wants to, and then get really good quality descending time, which we both know. And he can get more laps in, and he can continue to refine and develop and maintain his skills, and it's fun. And on a cold, dark, crap day like today, this is exactly the sort of day here where it's all grey and rainy, where if I'm on my own, I'm almost certainly going to reach for the e-bike over the mountain bike, because a 1 hour ride or a 3 hour ride has the same amount of cleanup and admin. And in an hour on the e-bike on turbo, I can get way more descents in, way more fun in. And an e-bike gets me out the door on a day like today, as I'm sure it does for Joe and the other pros who, they have to go riding for their job. And so you may as well make it a bit more fun.
Yeah, I think about my own personal experience of riding e-bikes, and I've definitely technically become a better rider, and my skill level has increased. Maybe it's at the detriment slightly of my anaerobic ability. Yeah, perhaps that is what suffered from almost exclusively riding e-bikes now. Yeah, but I have become a better rider, and I actually have less crashes now as well. And I'm almost certain that's because I spend more time riding downhill than I ever did before. Probably also helps that I now clip in. Do you ride flats? Or
flats for life?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I actually forced myself to start clipping in, and it was just before a trip to the Alps, and I thought, am I going to ride flats in the Alps, or am I going to ride clips? And I thought, I'm going to leave the flats at home. And it was the best thing I ever did, because it forced me into it, and I came away from it thinking, I can't go back now.
Oh, really?
And it has ruined me a little bit, because anytime, especially if I'm filming or just quite jumping on a bike just to try it out, usually you're on flats. It's amazing how vulnerable you feel now.
Something I suggest to riders on any bike, because most people who race are going to race clipped in, like most elites and stuff, like except Joe Smith actually, who races in Enduro World Series on flat still.
Sam Hill, eat your heart out.
Sam, exactly. And in fact, did someone podium a World Cup on flats last year? I might be getting mad at. Anyway, is that if you do clip into race, as part of your skill maintenance, development and acquisition, is during the winter now, do 6 weeks, 2 months on flats, to maintain that technique, that skill, because it's very easy to get lazy on clips and just yank on them. You don't drop your heels so much and all that sort of thing. It's easy to get quite lazy, I think, on clips, and maintaining the ability to ride flats. I think then when you go back on the clips, I think that you're potentially a better rider in the long run. So it's always that, like many things with training, it's that short-term or long-term outlook, because a lot of people don't like that. You say, right, I want you to go and ride flats for a month. Oh, but I'll be slower. I won't be as good. Well, yeah, maybe next week you'll be slower, or maybe the next few rides you'll be slower. Maybe you'll get better, and actually in a few weeks you won't be slower. But actually, what is the goal here? Do you want to be the best racer in the summer or not? If you do want to be the best racer in the summer, which is that long-term outlook, Ben,
yes,
then I would suggest, and I don't have data to prove it, but I believe that spending some time on flats in the winter will assist that process, especially for the youngsters where, you could come here to Forest of Dean and watch a mini downhill or, the mini enduro races they have, and you're going to see like 12, 13-year-old kids clipping in. And I would really like to see, and it sounds a bit controlling, like a rule where juvenile and youth categories must ride flat pedals or something like that, for the pure reason, kind of like, I think there are some rules like that in BMX actually, which I may have just made up. I think there are.
It makes sense.
Yeah, where it's like they don't need to clip in yet. They can learn later. Like, young kid who's going to bike, they can learn to ride clips in a couple of months, when they're 15. And actually, we end up with a whole generation of riders who are even better. Now, look, the kids these days don't need help with that, because there are like 13-year-olds absolutely tearing it, and it's unbelievable what they can do. But it's just a little thought I have. If I was organising racing, I'd be like, no clips for the kids.
Yeah. I dread to think the bad habits that I've slipped into, and I'm almost certain that's because I now clip in.
Yeah.
Whilst I would say I have less accidents, possibly, the chance of a biggie coming one day that's because of my technique is probably there. It's probably more.
Yeah, I think as well, I always think, touch wood, one of the reasons I haven't had a big injury or anything is I always feel like if I'm crashing, I can just get clear of the bike easily on flats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about crashing, because when you got riders like Joe Smith, for example, that are hitting, and Wyn and Charlie, that are hitting some of the biggest features you'd ever even consider on a bike, how do you prepare riders for that sort of impact protection?
So you can never obviously avoid or remove the risk of injury, but there are certain things that we can do to give them the best possible chance. And the two things that I think make the best, give them the best chance, are improving their mobility, so their ability to move their arms, legs and body through like a full range of motion everywhere that you're supposed to as a human. And as part of that mobility is to be strong in those positions too. So like the classic one is like arms overhead. And I see this all the time with just the everyday riders who come and see me at the gym. Including some good level ones actually, where they spend too much time driving on their phones, at laptops, and even hunched over your bike actually. And we're really I see just so many people come in and they just can't put their arm over their head because their upper back is rounded, their neck's tight, their shoulders and chests are tight, because everything they do is rounded forwards. And straight away there, if you're going like over the bars, imagine that Superman over the bars, that arms outstretched to catch yourself. If you don't have that mobility and some strength in those overhead positions, then when the crash takes you to those positions, what's going to happen? We're a lot more likely to do some damage, whether it's a strain, a break, that sort of thing.
I've actually, so we'll move on to it shortly. I've been doing your over 40s program, and one of the exercises is laying on your chest. And is it IWT?
VWT or IWT. Yeah, either or. Yeah.
And when I watched your little description video of how you do the exercise, I thought, well, that looks pointless.
Yeah.
and it wasn't until I got down into the position and started doing it and holding those positions that I suddenly realised, bloody hell, I struggle at that.
And that's really common. Yeah, exactly. Exercises like that are all about strengthening those postural muscles to help you be in a good position, to help you gain and maintain mobility, and then also to be strong in those positions. You know? And then I guess the other part of crash protection is there is an element of muscle being like the best body armor, people say, kind of like a rugby player. That's that school of thought, which has some merit. But obviously, there's always a payoff there between just getting massive and your ability to pedal all day and be able to move freely on the bike and stuff like that. So you definitely, there'll be some very naturally slim build, skinny riders who would definitely benefit. Yeah, and it's one of those, like there's genetics, obviously, and training history and all that sort of thing. But yeah, for a lot of people, putting some muscle on, improving mobility is going to make a big positive difference.
It's definitely a focus of mine. And one of the reasons that I reached out to you, because you recommended that I do your over 40s program.
Yeah, sorry.
But I am
36.
36. Yeah.
And looking like lean and mean and fit as well. But yeah.
but I am lacking in that strength department, and I don't train. So let's go on to the reasons why you decided it would be a good idea for me to follow your over 40s program.
So yeah, mostly just, well, two things. Like we chatted a little bit about injury history and stuff like that, and you said you had a few like back issues and things like that. And this program takes like a more gradual approach, basically, rather than straight in at the deep end. And you can also train at home, and obviously you travel a bit with work and stuff like that, so you can train with minimal kit. But also, when you don't have like when you don't have much experience doing training, then just something like that approach, where it's a lot of body weight, multi-direction. It's just a bit kinder way to ease into training, basically, even though you're not quite 40 yet. That to me seemed like it would be a good fit for what you had told me about your sort of lifestyle and what you're doing and what time you have available as well.
I definitely agree, and so far my experience of doing it, it's definitely well tailored to what I need to focus on, specifically in a mountain biking area, because I do lack the kind of core strength perhaps that you might really want for mountain biking and also for riding e-bikes. The one thing that maybe I noticed it when I first started riding e-bikes, but I'm less aware of it now, is how much of a full body workout it really is.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I always sort of come back to the haters with, because there are still a lot of them, as you know, is that you have choice on the way up the hill. It's either easy or hard on the e-bike. It's up to you. What's clear is that it's a shorter period of time compared to a pedal bike, but it could be as hard as you want or as easy as you want, basically. But then obviously what comes with that is a greater proportion of the ride is descending, and you could do a lot more density, if you like, of descents in a given amount of time. 2, 3, maybe even 4 times as many. And that comes with a full body workout each time. And then, we have the obvious weight of the bike to contend with as well. Like manualing an e-bike is pretty hard going, It does take a bit more body language and a bit more strength, a bit more leverage, a bit more commitment to do those things. I would really love actually something that I've thought about a few times is to quantify and just test the hypothesis that it is harder on the upper body in particular. Is so you know how you have like stages, power meter, cranks,
yes,
and they have a strain gauge in the crank. And I was thinking, I need someone cleverer than me, a bit more technical than me, to just put a strain gauge on a set of bars in the correct orientation, and then do back-to-back laps of the same bars, go on my pedal bike and my e-bike.
Yeah.
And let's see if it is true. Let's see if it is harder work on the upper body, because obviously everything's got an equal and opposite force. So there's more strain on the bars because I'm pushing and pulling on it harder on the e-bike. Because in my head, it does feel harder riding the e-bike on the upper body in particular. I imagine that's negated a bit the more skilled the rider gets, because they use a lot more timing and they use the momentum and like more pump with the legs and stuff maybe. Yeah, anyone listening who's a science boffin who can make that happen, I'll be interested. We'll do a video.
I've heard some people describe the weight of an e-bike and saying that it's not actually that much more than riding a regular mountain bike, because if you combine the weight of the rider and the bike itself, percentage-wise, it doesn't make a huge difference. But my view is that the bike itself is like this big pendulum that's away from your body.
Yeah.
And when you are riding it, sometimes you push, sometimes you pull, and you're trying to leverage this tool around the trails to get yourself from A to B. And like that those extra few kilos, I think they do have a significant effect. It's almost like that kind of, you talk about unsprung mass in a wheel.
Well, yeah.
And
yeah, absolutely.
The bike itself is almost the unsprung mass of your body, I find.
I mean, it's put a like a little bar up or something, a little stick up, and see which bike you can bunny hop higher.
Yeah.
And I don't mean pulling on clips, I mean doing it properly. Okay. And I'm pretty confident I can jump my enduro bike higher,
Yeah.
than I can the e-bike. Just there's more mass to get off the ground, more mass to
Absolutely.
work it, and maybe you ride the bikes differently as well.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, I want an EMTB podcast, but if I only had to have one bike, I'd get rid of the e-bike. I still prefer my mountain bike. I prefer that ride feeling on the descents, and yeah, as much as I love an e-bike ride, most e-bike I can do is on my own. Because I'm self-employed, I can ride in the week quite a bit. There's not always people to ride with, and for me that works really well. And I love an e-bike ride with mates as well when that happens. But actually, most of my social rides, most the racing I do, I still prefer my normal pedal bike.
What was your? You mentioned before that you'd ridden the Specialized SL, Levo SL. Have you ridden any of the newer SLs by any chance?
No, I haven't. No, because I saw you did a video on it. I'm sure that is pretty amazing, and I'm really hoping that when Vitas sort everything out, that there's a nice lightweight Vitas e-bike in the Pipeworks. And that's not a hint. They wouldn't tell me if there was.
It's the lightweight thing is starting to make a lot more sense to me. I found the first gen SL, it was just a little bit lacking grunt, and to me the power to weight, I would almost prefer just to ride a regular mountain bike. Now it's starting to shift in the direction of me thinking actually these make a lot of sense, and also they could even make more sense than a full fat mountain bike. I mean, I'm not quite there yet, but
I think the thing that really struck me was just how good it felt down the hill, where you've got maybe that bit more weight around the bottom bracket than a normal bike, that just seems to give you that good bit of stability without it not being fun.
Yeah.
That bit of weight that helps really get your suspension working well, but without feeling as cumbersome as a so-called full fat bike. Because, I mean, it's the whole like weight thing for, mountain bikes is quite an interesting one. I think, different teams some want the lightest downhill bike at the World Cup, and others are strapping weights to the down tubes and stuff like that. And there's two diverging thought processes and feelings. It's an interesting game.
I like now I've got so used to an e-bike. I like the added weight. I'm actually going to Bike Park Wales tomorrow, and I'm taking one of the SLs with me, because the thought of jumping from a full fat e-bike straight back onto my trail bike is something that I don't know if I'd really cope with that well now.
Yeah.
So
but you're gonna have a wicked day there. Bike Park Wales is prime. Although you want to hope this weather picks up, because it's like all those Welsh bike parks on a rainy day. It's pretty brutal.
It's gonna be wet.
But at least Bike Park Wales have got windows on the minibuses, unlike when you go to Dovey and there's no windows on the Landies.
Yeah, that's why I like Anstiniog, because it's like a proper minibus.
Oh yeah,
nice, cozy.
It's funny, talking about that manoeuvrability and the weight of the e-bike and stuff like that. Something that I thought about and then actually action. So I'm 5'9" a bit, just under 5'10" if I'm stand up straight, 177 centimeters for the Euros watching. And generally I would ride a size large mountain bike.
Okay.
Although maybe if I got one of the new crop, I might be down to medium, because things have got a bit longer. So around a 470 reach is what I tend to ride and feel really good on. And that's what I ride at the moment for my enduro bike. But when and that's what my previous e-Summit bike was as well. It's a large. So the two bikes, the e-bike and the non-bike, were basically identical, apart from one was electric. But whilst I had a great time on it, it certainly felt like a big cumbersome beast. And so what I've done is I've actually downsized to a medium e-bike for the one I got just at the end of last year, with only a 450 reach, which a lot of people would say, oh, it's too short, blah, blah, blah. But to me, it's about two things. It's number one, about the way I approach my e-biking is very much a fun tool for improving my riding when I got on my pedal bike.
Yes.
To be a better racer and rider and that sort of thing, which is still really important to me to progress even at like 43, nearly 44. And I feel like you get a lot of the stability that you would otherwise get from reach. You get that from the weight of the e-bike. You know? So maybe I wouldn't like my enduro bike to be 450 reach or a size medium. But with that added stability, that planted feeling of the e-bike, that shorter reach, it feels so good, like sizing down my e-bike compared to that. Now, maybe if my goal was to go as fast as possible on the e-bike to race it, or just have the most confidence, I wouldn't do that. But to me, to really make it the most fun tool for skill acquisition and lapping and sessioning, and the ability to like tip it from side to side, I've loved it, and I'm absolutely going to do the same thing next time I get an e-bike, is keep it on the smaller side.
I think all of the Vitus bikes seem to come with 800 wide bars. Do you cut your bars down?
Yeah, I do actually. I'm a big. What do I do now? I'm at 750 these days. Yeah, which actually a lot of people say is fairly narrow.
Yeah.
And whilst you should always take what pros do with a pinch of salt, you know, I'm like, wait a minute. So Richie Rude, who's quite a chunk bigger than me, he's running 750s. Jesse Melamed 740, and loads of these guys, like none of them are riding like 800 tree punchers, you know.
Yeah.
And I used to be a real proponent for get the widest bars possible, but that I think was trying to put a sticky plaster over the limitations of geometry 8 or 10 years ago.
Sure. Yeah.
Where the bike geometry, especially early 29ers, maybe wasn't sorted. And I felt like that wider bar kind of gave you that bit more control and stability.
Yes.
Whereas now, I think that the geometry settled quite a bit in terms of reach, head angle, bottom bracket, you know, all of those things. And the bikes are just so much better that you can just run what's more comfortable for you. And chopping that, I was running 780 for years, chopping 15 mil off each end, which is tiny, isn't it? I mean,
it's not.
What's
it's not
that?
nothing.
That much off each end.
Yeah.
But it really made such a difference straight away. Like I really could feel it. And yeah, some 750.
If you were to put somebody in a press-up position, perhaps on a bar, and whatever their position naturally is when they do that press-up, if you were to measure from one hand to the other, do you think that would be the bar width that you should go with?
Yeah, maybe. But then the thing is, I see a lot of people who come in the gym, and when I assess them, whether they're an aspiring youth racer or like a 50-year-old dude who just rides on the weekend, you know, I have all sorts of people come and see me. And you get them to go down and do a press-up. Sometimes it's a bit of a car crash, you know, let's say arms everywhere. And often the position of their hands isn't necessarily what's optimal. It's what's allowing for their sort of strengths and weaknesses, which may mean that is optimal, at least in the short term. So I think there's something to be said for that, but I think there is a wide range of where you can be strong. Yeah. I guess the problem is that certainly going very short on the bars, if it's too narrow, is an expensive game because you've then got some bars. Having said that, with everything on sale at the moment, you could probably pick up some bars for 20 quid. It's just then a bit of metal that goes in the recycling or something, isn't it? Or give it to someone else. But so, you know, I was in a privileged position from testing where I probably had half a dozen handlebars in my shed, all really good quality, totally usable, where I'd got them free from reviewing products. Yeah. So I was in a nice position where I could just chop something, have a go. Because the reality is, if you go from if you make a very small marginal change, you're not going to notice it. You're just kidding yourself. Yeah. You know, you need to be like bracketing your suspension. You kind of need to say, right, I'm currently running 780. Let's just go to 740 or 750, which feels better. And then maybe you go back a bit, or maybe you don't, you know?
Yeah.
But again, it's a really personal thing. If you're just riding whatever width you're riding, and you're really happy with it, and you don't bang your hands all the time, then don't give it too much thought. I guess I'm a bit of fettler, and also, you know, I was going to ride like Tweed Valley and stuff, and I know like the trend up there is for very narrow bars because the trees are so tight. Yeah. So the environment dictates the thing there. If you're riding bike park laps and Morzine and you know, bike park Wales all the time, you're not hitting many trees, and you can run a wider bar. You know.
Now, I know you're into endurance, but we're 54 minutes in. I'm just going to have a quick break there and stretch my back out. Of all things, my back, because this sofa is soft.
It's a big squidgy one, isn't it? Yeah. No worries.
A quick break. Just as we had a break there, Ben told me a deep, dark secret that him and his wife don't stay on the same side of the bed at night.
Well, that makes it sound like we saw at midnight. What I said was we don't have set sides of the bed. So each evening when we go, or when it's bedtime, we just get in the bed, and sometimes I'm on the left, sometimes on the right, which does blow people's minds. Like, apparently we're complete freaks for doing this.
That's mental.
But we don't swap sides in the middle of the night, just to be clear.
Right, my turn on the left. I thought we could swap actually this conversation midway through, although that might be a bit tricky for continuity. So we've spoken about your over 40s program. Tell me a little bit about the other programs that you offer on your platform.
Yeah, so I guess the main one that probably be of interest to people is what's called the Complete Mountain Bike Program, and that's a bit more performance focused. So I say it's for trail and enduro riders, or enduro racers, sorry. And that's a gym-based program as well. Like, there isn't a bodyweight home training option for that unless you've got a home garage gym. Yeah. And so both programs are similar in the fact they're delivered via an app, and they are progressive as well and scalable for different abilities and experience levels and amounts of time you have and stuff like that. But yeah, as I said, the Complete Mountain Bike Program has got a bit more performance-focused stuff in it, like interval training, and the gym work is a bit more intense and things like that. So whereas the over 40s, the gym sessions are a little shorter, can leave you a little less fatigued, a little less sore, thinking a bit more about that group of people potentially having, maybe family or work commitments and a bit more time straps and stuff like that. Having said that, as you know, I have under 30s on the over 40s program. I have people in their 40s and 50s using the Complete Mountain Bike Program. Maybe if they've got experience in the gym and they still want to race and they're a bit more focused there, and everything in between, really. So I think at the heart of it, with the programs and with like my YouTube, my Instagram, and all the things I do, and podcasts like this, is that I just really believe that every mountain biker, electric or pedaling or otherwise, can just be better by being fitter and stronger.
Yes. And
again, a message I always come back to, I hope you don't mind mentioning, but like on Downtime Podcast, which I've been on a number of times, and maybe some of the guys listening will be familiar with me on that podcast, is this idea of just being a better human, where yes, we could be like mountain bike specific and think about the positions on the bike, think about the energy systems, like you talked about the anaerobic earlier and stuff like that. Yes, those are important, but the most important thing is to be a good human, a good, well-rounded human. And to me, that means having a level of strength, having a level of, fitness, whatever that means, to just do things, to function as a human.
Yes.
And a good human is going to be better at riding an e-bike, And then you take that to the next level and you want to be a really good e-bike or a really good e-bike racer, then we get more specific, And I really believe that that's achievable and attainable for everybody. Everyone can find the time to do it. And as much as I don't like telling people what to do, everyone should be working to be strong.
Yeah.
And I don't apologize for saying that, is that we all need strength if you want to age well, if you want to be a good human, if you want to have the freedom to do the things you want to do now and in the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years.
Yes. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And I think it's a good thing to remind people of, because it's all too easy to sort of relax into our routines and tell ourselves we've not got enough time to do it, but I think it doesn't take that much time out of the day, really.
No, exactly. And when it becomes a habit, it's just a positive part of your lifestyle. And when you start feeling the difference, that's when you get the real buy-in from people. Because I have a lot of people, I'll be honest, who are a bit like, oh, I'm not sure about training, I'm not sure about the gym. Yeah. But if you can just get over that first bit and do 4, 6 or 8 weeks of consistency, and then you feel it when let's say you've got to put your e-bike on the roof of your car to go riding,
It's hard enough.
A lot of people can't do that on their own.
Yeah.
Can you come and help me or whatever, or, you feel it on a ride that your back doesn't ache halfway through the ride, or that, I can bunny hop my e-bike now. I couldn't do that before.
Yeah.
I can do more runs. I don't make silly mistakes on the last run of the day because I'm so knackered because my arms are like noodles.
Yeah.
It's like you can, once you get that, that's when you really get the buy-in, and people are like, okay, maybe there is something to this.
The one area that I really notice is when I begin to fatigue on a ride is on the descents. I start to stand up more. My body weight tends to move forward a bit. And that's where I then start to make the mistakes. I think maybe it's a lack of squatting ability that might be my issue. I don't know what you would pinpoint if somebody said that to you.
Yeah. I'll be honest, that's kind of the opposite of, I think, what a lot of people do.
It?
Yeah, I think that as people get tired, they tend to move their weight back more.
Okay.
And sit and kind of almost squat more, and then the legs get even more tired. So what you're saying is, I'm not going to say unusual,
Well, I'd say
but I'm trying to kind of picture what that looks like. Maybe you're trying to like lock out your legs a bit, so that, or something like that.
I'm trying to avoid the squat, I think, as you say it, maybe it is a case of my weight actually moves back. I mean, I do notice is that my body position becomes poor. It's not optimum, and that's the one area that I really recognise once I start to fatigue.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's always interesting to look at the best in the game, okay, pro riders, and let's look at a rider like everyone will be aware of, like Loic Bruni, and just watch one of his runs from a World Cup, and you will see that it's all about posture. Like his body position, his posture is so strong, and the style is maybe a little rigid compared to others, but I think it paints the picture well, that strength and that posture that doesn't change from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill, from the first run to the fifth run or the eighth run of the weekend, is part of the reason why he's so good, is because he can, no matter what's going on the trail, on the bike, he's always able to maintain that good posture. And posture is at the heart of good bike riding.
Yeah.
That, relatively straight leg, mostly flat back, that kind of elbows out-ish, but, and that upper back posture that is a strong position, as soon as that starts to break down at some point in the chain, that's when we start making mistakes. That's when you then can't weight the front tire anymore. And it's always a slippery slope, especially with the sort of beginner to intermediate rider, where they're like, I can't get any front wheel grip. And they start looking at like tire pressures or fork pressures and stuff like that. And actually they just don't have enough weight to make their suspension work very well.
Yeah.
And so they go even less pressure on the front, and things like that. And it's pushing now, it's not supporting them and stuff.
Sure.
And actually you need to get, I'm a massive advocate of skills coaching as well as physical coaching. And I continue to have it, I've had coaching this winter. And, I'm no pro rider and I'm definitely not stylish, but I back myself as a decent rider these days, and I continue to have skills coaching to work on the basics. And I urge everyone watching to do that as well, to go and get some good skills coaching, to get on the front where you then have that good posture on the bike. And that's where it's just basics in the gym, basics on the bike is what makes you strong or weak or fit or slow or fast or, all of those things.
I think the other thing is to have that little devil on your shoulder always reminding you of things, like keeping your eyes up and look far ahead down the trail and get into that good body position, like elbows out a bit.
Yeah, and it takes time as well. And again, one of the valuable parts of coaching for me is that you get someone to tell you what you're actually doing, and maybe show you a video instead of what you thought you were doing. Yeah. Just this winter, I think I'm quite handy on a bike, and ride around. Ian, the coach from Pro Ride Guides here in the Forest, again would recommend. I paid for it. There's no freebies. But would recommend. Yeah. Got me to ride through the corners. Right, how did that feel, Ben? Yeah, good. I felt like I was quite low, and And then he shows me the video. I'm like, shit. No.
Yeah, that's not pretty.
This is that does not look like my perception of what was happening there. Right, let's do that again. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, that's how that feels.
Sure. Yeah.
And you can't do that on your own. And especially been doing it a long time, there's a lot of bad habits to work on, to improve, you know. And I think a lot of the youth that are coming through at the moment have got unreal skills, because number one, what are they always doing every time they go riding? They're sessioning stuff, and they've all got phones. The phones come out, they're watching it, and there's so much content, so they know what it should look like. And a lot of them are having coaching from a young age as well. And that's why so many young riders are just so, call it talented, call it skilled, whatever you want. They just absolutely ripping.
Yeah. I mean, when I've been doing your training at home, I don't have a mirror anywhere. So like for me to be able to see whether I've got good form or not is quite difficult. Would you encourage people to film themselves maybe? Yeah,
sometimes it's a valuable tool. So yeah, if you go to a gym, there's usually mirrors there, which people can be dismissive of. They're just for vain people to look at their arms and stuff. And there is an element of that. But actually, they are a useful tool. And sometimes I'll take a client and we'll go and work in front of the mirror. Right, have a look at that. Right. Oh, okay. We get it dialed. And then we take it away and now make it feel the same without the visual feedback, you know? Yeah. But yeah, you can film yourself. And certainly, one of the things I do with athletes I coach directly is say, you know, if you're not sure, just WhatsApp me a little video. You know, if you're doing a new exercise, you're not sure, WhatsApp it over. Okay, that looks good, but try this, you know, and so on. But yeah, getting that feedback's really handy.
In November, there was I think a stand up to cancer thing that was on, and about doing 100 press ups a day. Okay. And so I got into the habit of doing 100 press-ups a day, and I do them in like 20, sometimes 10 blocks, and sort of break it down. And and I was feeling really good about myself until my girlfriend filmed me doing them, and I realised, oh, they're not proper press-ups. I'm not going deep enough. And then all of a sudden,
just little pumps.
Yeah, exactly. And when I started doing them deep enough, I thought, oh no, now I'm in trouble. Like achieving 100 a day is going to be tricky now.
Yeah. And it's funny, like stuff like that is like, I'm all for, you know, doing these things to support that. But I also get a bit like, because how many people can really do 100 good press ups in a day?
Yeah.
And if you've not done any and now you're doing that, I think it generally doesn't end that well, especially if you're not doing any pulling exercises as well. It should be, right, you can do 100 a day, but you also need to do all these like band pull aparts and some body weight rows to like balance that out.
Sure.
Or something like that. But it is what it is. It's like, it's a bit of fun.
So while we're talking, well, we are an e-bike podcast after all.
Yes.
Let's try and dispel some e-bike myths, or maybe support them possibly.
Yeah.
What have I got here? Oh God. Will an e-bike make you fat and lazy?
Only you will make yourself fat and lazy. Or not. No. Basically, as I said earlier, an e-bike is a tool. And for some people who maybe are already, you know, overweight or not so fit and stuff like that, then it may be a tool that enables them to be less fat and to be more active and to lose weight and to be more healthy. For other people, it's a tool that lets them do, those easy miles and stuff like that. So it's all about how you apply it. What I will say is that, especially as they get more and more torque and they do respond well to higher cadences maybe, in general, although the torque is obviously changing that, is that it is very easy to, I think, lose that leg strength, that grinding a fire road climb on your mountain bike would have given you, that stimulus, that lower cadence, like push, 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 and that stand on the pedals to get up that short, sharp climb, that little sprint, you know, where it is about power and strength, where I think on the e-bike it's very easy to lose those unless you're purposely doing a lot of like sprinting above the motor, so above 25k an hour for us, or 32 in America, whatever it is. And if you're not doing those things regularly, then I definitely think there's a lot of potential to lose that leg strength and sprint power. Yeah. But guess what? You should be doing strength training. So if you are doing some strength training, and including that some sort of power training where you basically, which is effectively moving but quicker, then is that a problem? Probably not.
No.
So if, e-biking is part of a healthy lifestyle for you that includes strength training, then who cares if you don't have those higher outputs, if you like, from your legs.
Yeah.
So for me, no. And like I said earlier, in terms of the lazy bit, in inverted commas there, is that for me, I think I do more rides in a year because I have an e-bike. Because there are days like today where if I was at home now, back in Bristol, on a Friday lunchtime, and it's like lashing with rain, but I really wanted to go for a ride, I would probably not go and pedal my mountain bike today on my local trails, because in my head it wouldn't quite be worth it compared to the e-bike, where I definitely would ride. And I think I do more riding because I have an e-bike.
So for those people that often say, I won't buy an e-bike until I'm too old to be riding my mountain bike, would you say that that is a good approach to have? Or, in my opinion, the sooner you get riding an e-bike, the more fun you can have on your mountain bike?
I'm not sure how I'd think about. I guess neither of those is right nor wrong. They're just different. And I can understand the purists who, like, I don't want anything else to charge. I don't want a motor. I don't want the noise. I just want to ride my bike like I always have. And that's absolutely fine. As long as they're not like shouting at you when you ride past on your e-bike, or like abusing us on social media because we do like to ride an e-bike. I believe in choice on many things. But, and I guess, yes, you could say, to us, it's more fun sometimes, but to me, my mountain bike is more fun, and I would have that over the e-bike if I only had one.
Yeah.
So I guess they're just different outlooks. But going back to the first part of that, I'm going to ride as long as possible and then get an e-bike. Is that yes? So what's going though? What's stopping you from pedaling? That's then making you need the e-bike. What's happened at that point? Because if it's got that bad that you really can't. Is it because have you let your like aerobic cardiovascular fitness slide, or is it a health scare, or have you got too overweight, or have you become like weak in terms of muscle mass and your ability to create strength? Well, if that's your outlet, I'm going to ignore everything and just ride until my body kind of decays to a point. And that sounds harsh, and that's maybe not the right word, until the point where the only way I can get up the hill is on an e-bike. And that might happen at some point to all of us, I guess. But my outlook is different, is that we should be doing everything to prevent and prolong that process from happening, so that I've got the freedom of choice for as long as possible. Because I want to be riding for another 30 or 40 years, and e-bikes are going to be a part of that. But I hope probably that so are normal bikes, so are pedal bikes. And so no matter what your long-term plan is for your bike of choice, like I always say, I think you should be doing some strength training at home or at the gym, body weight with weights, whatever, When
talking about effort, can you argue that riding an e-bike is as much effort as riding a regular mountain bike?
It can be, if you want it to be. In general, most of my e-bike rides are easier. Like, my heart rate is a bit lower. I think if I just naturally just go for an e-bike ride and don't think about it, it is easier. If I go and I do sometimes for an e-bike ride where I'm going to graft here, I'm going to get up that hill hard and, fast or whatever, then my heart rate goes super high, but obviously all the climbs are a lot shorter. So it does become a bit of a different game. And this was one of the interesting things I didn't mention, I probably should have earlier actually, is that one of my long-term clients is a guy called Chris Hutchins, who is like a Scottish and UK like mountain bike kind of legend in his own way, I guess, where he's raced downhill World Cup back in the day, like rode for Orange for Chris Porter in a skin suit at Fort William.
Wow.
And has been like top 20 in Enduro World Series before, like an amazing athlete and rider. And the last 2 years, including this 2023 in Glentress, he raced e-bike cross-country world championships. Which is an absolute savage hour of your life.
Yeah.
It is like when you see the heart rate file, you're like, oh, that is brutal. But it was actually, you know, when we really looked at the requirements of that compared to maybe like your XCO normal cross country, it is really quite different because it's just like an interval training session on Zwift. That's how it looks.
Yeah, I bet.
Because even the long climb is like a minute or two because they're on just turbo and they're working as hard as possible.
Yeah.
So the longest climb is a minute or two, bang, like it's really intense interval. And then the downhill takes about the same amount of time as it would on the pedal bike in normal XCO racing. And then bang, you're into the next one. And it's this really, really incredibly intense game. Kind of almost more like a cyclocross race, you know.
Sounds like it.
The way it looks. There's certainly no shortage of effort there. Pretty crazy and unique game.
I've actually taken to, in the summer months, riding my road bike a bit. And I've actually found that the cadence of riding a road bike is actually quite similar to that of riding an e-bike. So I do find that they're quite good crossover activities, perhaps. So a lot of people, maybe that ride e-bikes, wouldn't even consider a road bike. For me, it's like, go and jump on one, go and experience it, because I think it's actually quite cool. Yeah,
100%. Like, if it's got two wheels, ride it, you know, like, whatever you want, whatever you enjoy, whatever you can afford, whatever you've got time to do, then I'm all for it. And they all cross over. And I'm a big believer in, mountain bike is not all about performance and just always trying to be better. It's just about fun. But as part of that, for me, the fun is getting better. And I always say, especially to young riders up and coming, is build that kind of broad bike vocabulary where, maybe you ride some BMX or you ride some pump track, you ride some road bike, you ride, everything, downhill, e-bike, enduro, whatever, obviously 10 bikes in the garage. But and you see people riding motocross, for the same reason, that physicality of motocross, is like that next step on, and obviously it's sustained as well because it's lap based. And absolutely savage. So
motocross, having spoken to people riding it, it seems like one of the most intense sports out there, I think.
Yeah, and dangerous. Like, oh my God. Like when I start with people, you do your health questionnaire, injury history, and the mountain bikers, they'll be, oh yeah, I've done my collarbone or this or that. And then the people who've been doing motocross a while, it's like, right, I better get a new pen here because I'm running out of ink. And it's like, how many metal plates have you got? And I can't remember. Did I break my back twice or 3 times? You're like, what? They're just wired up differently. It's like, you think mountain bike is a bit dangerous, but motocross is a whole nother level.
Now, one last thing that I'd like to touch on, which is something which I don't know whether you cover, is nutrition. How often do you speak to people you work with about nutrition, and what approaches do you take?
So it's actually something I've been having more conversations about recently, and I guess over the last few years I've only offered the broadest and vaguest of advice. Because it's such a rabbit hole, but it's something on my to-do list of 2024 actually, is to really put something succinct and useful together. So what's my approach? My approach is, as much as possible, to eat just like real food, unprocessed, which is very much in the news at the moment with the whole ultra processed people book and eat, which is, I'm really glad has done so well and got so much attention, because I've been going on about this stuff for years about, we just need to eat real food, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, animals, eggs, fish, whatever, that's what, and drinking water and, dairy and stuff like that as well, if you can tolerate that, and so that's at the heart of it really, is if we're eating real foods and minimizing the processed junk, for want of a better word, then it's also, you feel good, and it's also easier to eat about the right amount of calories, that you don't start putting on loads of weight or anything like that. Because one of the things that's become really clear is that, yes, there's a lot of calories hidden in all that processed food, like from added vegetables and stuff like that, largely, that bump the calories up. But also when you're eating those processed foods, is that they're designed to make you want more and to eat more. They're easy and quick to eat, so you can very quickly consume a lot of calories. They don't then leave you feeling very full or very satisfied, so you go back to eat more. And it's really clear that those processed foods contribute to you consuming more calories, and then that's part of the issue with, you know, the obesity epidemic that we have. I guess going into more depth, I'm probably going to piss some people off, but to me, it's really clear that we're omnivores. You know, look at our teeth, our digestive tracts, look at, you know, all of that stuff. If you put aside the vegan narrative, which I think is deeply flawed, but that's a whole other podcast, and I'm going to get like worked up, even in terms of the environmental claims. I would say as well, is that we're meant to eat meat.
I think some of the problem with the meat these days is the quality of the meat, and I think for me the importance of perhaps spending that extra bit of money on quality meat is what's the direction that we're trying to take at home. We definitely consume less meat. We haven't completely cut it out, and whilst we live a more vegan diet, I don't consume as much dairy either.
Yeah.
We haven't cut it out entirely.
Yeah.
And actually I found that my body doesn't respond very well. I went through a period of trying to just cut out dairy altogether.
Yeah.
And massively reduce my meat intake. And actually I found that my muscle mass I didn't have much to lose.
Yeah.
And I was losing it. So
that protein intake is super important.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're both in a relatively privileged position where, you know, I can go to the butcher's and I can afford to get some like really nice, good quality local meat, you know, from a cow that lives on something recognisable as a farm. And they had quite a nice life before they put the bolt gun in its head. And, you know, and that's a really nice position to be in. But the other thing that I would say is that although people who can afford e-bikes can probably afford to buy a nice bit of meat, but, you know, is that people from the poorer backgrounds and those demographics, they should still, even though they can't afford, in quotes, better quality good meat, their health and the health of their children will still be better off buying the intensively farmed meat that is available to them in economic terms, even though it may not be agreeable to us in terms of welfare and or the environment. Their health and their children's health will still be better off for it. Now, I'm putting aside things like the crazy chlorine chicken and stuff, which I don't actually know much about, but it just sounds pretty gnarly. But the whole thing for me is about just eating real food. Protein is something that keeps cropping up. I did a bit of a post about it the other day, actually, about its importance for health and maintaining muscle mass and wanting to build muscle and strength. And so, you know, if I want to be a bit more specific, I would suggest that you aim to eat 2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight most days. Excuse me. And when you start adding up what you maybe do at the moment, a lot of people are going to find they're a bit short on that. And I would suggest that your health, your fitness, your performance would be better if you did try to get closer to that at least. And for people who are maybe listening who are trying to lose weight, you know, drop body fat, then, you know, starting with hitting that protein target and then filling up the rest of your diet with, you know, some vegetables, some carbs, some fat, is a really great way of doing it. Because when you're hitting that protein target, it really helps to keep you full and satiated. So, you know, so you're satisfied and not then, you know, going for the snacks and stuff like that. So the other thing as well is that protein requires more calories to effectively break down and to digest as well. So you kind of get that added bonus where you eat X number of calories of steak or chicken or eggs, and a higher proportion of that is used to then digest it as well. So, you know, it's a win on many levels. Yeah.
I'm glad we touched on that, because I think it's as much as you're known for the strength side of training. I think it's really interesting to hear that as well.
We can't separate these things. Like everything's connected. You know, your mind, your emotions, your stress, your body, your diet, your sleep, your relationships. Nothing is in isolation. Sure. Like the older I get, the more kind of hippy dippy I get in a little bit of a way, where actually I think that, health comes from so many places. And for me, it comes from trying to have really good relationships with my wife, with my friends, with my children. Health comes from the food that I eat, the things that I do, from being in nature today. If I go for a ride after this, from riding my bike, it comes from being kind to everyone I meet, and having empathy for people, and all of those things. I think that all builds. I'm trying to be the best human I can within reason, trying to do most things right most of the time. And I'm not trying to pretend I'm perfect or so. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I guess a message like always trying to get across in terms of fitness and training and being a better human and being a better rider is that you can all do that. Everyone watching and listening can do that. And it's just about trying to get most things right most of the time. And that's achievable. And there are times where fewer things get done right, again in inverted commas, over Christmas, where I put on a little bit of weight every Christmas. And that's fine because I eat a shitload of chocolates and mince pies and Stollen bites and all of that stuff. And I love it. And I've got no regrets because I know that in January, most things are going to be right most of the time. And 2 weeks later, I'm back to how I was at the start of December.
Yes.
And if you want to be a pro athlete, then the most things needs to become nearly all things right. And instead of most of the time, it's nearly all of the time, And so it's that sliding scale. Yeah. What you get out is what you put in.
I think that's a really nice place to leave it. So I think basically what's best thing for me to do now is just to ask you, where can people find you? And also, where's the best place to look to perhaps sign up to one of your courses? Yeah,
so Instagram @strengthfactory_coach. I'd love for you to give me a follow. And also, if you pop in Strength Factory on YouTube, you'll find my YouTube channel, which I'm plugging away at. It's a tricky old game.
Tell me about it.
Tipped over 7,000 subs the other day.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm pretty stoked on that. 10,000 is like the next big goal, I guess. And then on my website, I'm sure there'll be a link in the description, thestrengthfactory.uk. You can see all of my online training programs. And I always like to look after the podcast listeners. So you can get 20% off of any of those programs, including the Over 40s program that you did, Ben, by using the code EMTBPOD at checkout. And if you've got any questions as well, I'm always open. So on social media, through the contact form on the website, I always do my best to answer everything. I'm an open book. There are no secrets, okay? There's no secret sauce to my training. Yeah. Maybe there should be, but there isn't, okay? So if you've got any questions about anything I said today, hit me, come at me, or drop them under the thing on your Instagram or your YouTube. I'll have a little look at that as well.
Well, that's great.
And I'd love to get back to you.
And thanks for putting that discount code in there. I'll put it down in the show notes. So if you missed it, just click on the description below and you'll see a link there for you. It's stopped raining. I think, is it time for a ride maybe?
Yeah, I reckon maybe a cheeky baby chino and a ride. Sounds good.
Sounds good. Cheers, Ben.
Cheers.